Beloved British Columbia Conference Church members, our conference's video for this month brings the testimony of Pastor Tom and Linda Glatz. They talk about faithfulness, and faithfulness is a theme that fascinates me. Despite their human nature, sinful human nature, faithfulness and love, they are intimately connected. Even the worst criminals, they are faithful to those whom they love. I'm sure you'll be blessed by this video. Sit back, relax, and feel the blessings that you receive from God from their testimony.
It was 2 years ago that my sister Pam and her husband Brian shared a stewardship story about our family business when I was growing up. My sister, my brother, my parents and I all worked on our family business, the Bozeman Hot Springs in Montana. How we would close the hot springs and our KOA campground every Friday night and then reopen again Saturday night after sundown so that we could keep Sabbath. And it was quite a process. They shared about how my dad would go to each campsite on Friday afternoon and remind people that the hot springs pools were going to be closing soon, and he would always invite them to a complimentary just before closing swim. It was more than just a business. It was a ministry because, of course, people had lots of questions. Well, today, Tom and I would like to tell you the rest of the story. After 50 years of operating the hot springs 6 days a week, my parents decided to retire. And they sold both the KOA campground and the hot springs. They sold the hot springs swimming pools to another Seventh-day Adventist who continued to keep the business closed on Saturday. And the new owners made improvements on the place and just overall really enjoyed the business. Life was not always easy for them, and they experienced a devastating fire. But I remember even in the midst of rebuilding after the fire, they experienced God's blessings, and they knew that His presence was there. Well, time went on, and those owners decided to sell this popular resort. And the interesting thing was that the Bozeman Chronicle, the newspaper for the area there, had headlines: "New hours, new owners for the Bozeman Hot Springs. For the first time in nearly 50 years, the Bozeman Hot Springs will be open late on Friday night and all day on Saturday too. It's all part of the new owners' plans for this local landmark." Plans were made to add an outdoor water park with water slides and a wave pool. Best of plans.
Alas, it was not to be. The new owners could not make enough to cover the payments on the springs, and in less than a year, it was back in the hands of the previous owners, and once again, closed on Sabbath. I remember talking to the wife of the owner, and I remember her saying, they felt that the business was a very special business that God had blessed. Decades it had been closed on Sabbath, and now they were under conviction that it should always be closed on Sabbath. They were now praying and searching for the right buyer.
And now steps in a young and energetic couple who have visions for the future of the hot springs. And as time goes on, it becomes a really beautiful place. It is more popular and profitable today than it ever has been before. It's not just a hot springs, it's a destination. But for over 7 decades, the Bozeman Hot Springs continues to rest on the 7th day of the week as God had intended. Now, it's not always been easy to have a recreational business closed on Saturday, on a weekend. And throughout all the difficulties, those owners, my family, the next owner, and now the current owners, through the difficulties they've experienced, not just that God is present, but that God is completely sufficient.
In the book Gospel Workers, page 430, Ellen White talks about the establishment of work in new areas and the importance of erecting a new building in honor of the Sabbath. She calls them memorials to God's Sabbath. When an interest is aroused in any town or city, that interest should be followed up. The place should be thoroughly worked until a humble house of worship stands as a sign, a memorial of God's Sabbath, a light amid the moral darkness. These memorials are to stand in many places as witnesses to the truth. I like to think of the Bozeman Hot Springs as a memorial to God. I like to think of how God has been faithful to those families who through the decades continued to follow God and seen His blessings. I am sure that your faith through the years has set up many memorials to God too, and I would love to hear your story.
It was an amazing testimony, wasn't it? God honored the faithfulness of His children, especially as they closed their business, as a beautiful testimony for everyone in town that they love the Lord, the Creator of the universe, and they are faithful to Him. Well, brothers and sisters, that's how God is. There are many promises in His Word, promises to us, but there is one from the beginning, from our creation, from the creation of this world until the very end, that God will honor those who are faithful in worshiping Him and recognizing Him as their Creator. And that promise is the promise related to the Sabbath day. And there is a passage in the Bible that warms my heart because it tells us whom God is. It's found in the book of 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 11 to 13. This is a faithful saying, for if we died with Him, we shall also live with Him. If we endure, we shall also reign with Him. If we deny Him, He will also deny us. If we are faithless, He remains faithful. He cannot deny Himself. God is faithful, and God expects us to be faithful to Him as well. His blessings will flow abundantly. Well, we have reached the last month of the year. About 30 to 35% of the conference's needs, financial needs, are supplied by you, by your generosity, by your faithfulness to God. We especially ask you to make a special donation. Be faithful to God in your tithes and offerings, and the gospel will continue to progress, and more people will be reached in the British Columbia territory and around the world by God's people being faithful to Him. And soon we'll be worshiping God face to face throughout eternity. Our faithful God will be honoring the faithfulness of His people. May God bless you richly, and thank you in advance for your faithfulness.